Right, before we get into the coaching stuff, which we're kind of leading into there, we've got to address this one controversy from your career, which you've never really spoken about. I know back in the day you maybe said something that was like on Twit longer or something when this happened, but right around this time, when I think it might even have been just before you became the coach, I think it was around the time you were becoming the coach of NIP, there was this story where you did like a fundraiser, as far as I know, it was for your region, right, the Balkan region, and you were trying to get basically like a whole bunch of money raised, like a charity move basically, and then there was all sorts of complicated elements to this story where basically it was something like to raise the money, right? If people don't know, this is actually true, I know this for a fact. When you have a PayPal account, when you first open them, like sometimes obviously they don't want like money laundering just happening all over the place. So they don't just let you put like infinite money into one PayPal account in one day because they need to check like, what the fuck is this? Like, you know, maybe this is like some criminal shit. So what happened is while you were like part way through this charity thing from memory, you sort of had to say like, oh, we can't like put any more in this account or something. So I know you got like, I think it was like Anders with the On Fire account was like, they let you theirs and that was putting some money in. And then basically that was just part of the drama because then it involved Anders in this, even though it's kind of, you know, you and whatever you were doing. And then this is what happened, right? When it was all raised, it was one of those ones where people after a while just noticed like, whatever happened to that money that was raised for that thing? Wasn't that supposed to happen? And then everyone started to get really suspicious, like, what's going on here? And I remember there was a guy who claimed he was, I don't know if he actually was, but he claimed he was a journalist, actually from some Balkan country, who, here's the problem, right? I'll just say as a journalist, sometimes you do have to be a bit nuts as a journalist. Like, I'll give you an example, right? It's not really normal, like, the lengths that, like, I've gone to like, expose, like corruption in Astralis, for example. Like, I don't live in Denmark. It doesn't affect me personally. Like basically, I have to just, I mean, what I do is I psychologically just think of, like, Nicola Nyholm, and I just think, right, I'm going to listen, this guy needs to fucking get taken down. So yeah, I'll go to the ends of the earth. So I will say, just because you're not a doesn't mean your work's bad. But I will just add in this detail that when this guy then made all these claims, because what he claimed was, because he was in the Balkan region, he claimed that like you'd gone there, you'd bought like a second-hand BMW or something, but he claimed it was like, you know, brand new from the dealership, and claimed he'd like seen all the papers and stuff. And then basically he was building a story that you were like fucking Bernie Madoff. You were like some financial wizard who ripped everyone off, and you'd bought a BMW with it. So you made it sound like, you know, that's where all the money went. You bought like a BMW fucking, I don't know, S-Class or something. And then that, you know, he'd found this all. But I will say, the reason why I do have a little bit of doubt about this guy's story is because later in the year, he did literally make a death threat towards Anders. Like, he basically told Anders, like, I'll kill you if you come to, like, I think it was like maybe like some event in Romania, I forget what it was, some nuts story like that. So obviously people wonder, right, what happened with all that? Like, people think basically, based on that story initially, that you just stole the money, right? So give me your side of it. What happened?
Oh, yeah, this might be a bit long, but okay. First off, what happened was, if we roll back the years, this was in 2014. There was a flooding in the Balkan region, mainly in Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia, where there was like a lot of rain that time, and like houses were like being flooded off and destroyed. A lot of people like lost their homes. A lot of issues with the like everyday groceries and stuff like that. So I got the idea, like, okay, a lot of people are doing charities where they try to gather money and try to help. At that time, I don't think the CS community had any like sort of charity of that size. So my idea was, okay, let's talk to all the people I know within the pro scene. Let's gather up 4 teams, and we're gonna do like a mix where we just play each other, like basically the FPL of today. But that wasn't the case back then. We didn't have FPL, so I basically just contacted everyone I knew in the CSGO scene and asked them if they were willing to participate in this tournament. And the thing was that, okay, we're going to play a tournament and we're going to have viewers, and viewers can, during the game, they can donate. And if they donate, they will be able to win prizes from Steel Series. So I contacted Steel Series also and say, okay, can you support with something? You don't need to support with money, but you can support with stuff from Steel Series. So if someone donates, they will be in the raffle to win prizes. And they were like, yeah, sure. And they actually like did put in a lot of like stuff. It wasn't just like a headset, but they actually did put in like many things. And also at that time, a lot of people that I didn't know contacted me, and that was people like working in the business. So people who knew about structuring things, video editor guys and all that. So I had this contact with all these people. I remember also Fnatic reaching out. Specifically, I remember, I think it was Karn who reached out and said like, okay, we can do this with you, but we need more time. We cannot just do it in 2 days as I said I would do. And I was like, no, we need to do it fast because we need to get the money fast down to those regions through the Red Cross so we can help with like everyday kind of things. So that was afterwards, that was one of my biggest mistakes, that I didn't do it with Fnatic, because if I would have done it with Fnatic, the story would have been different today. But yeah, that wasn't the case. So we did this tournament, we played those games, we did mix up, we did some sort of storytelling around building up this team. So I went to Inferno Online, I went up with Spawn, who still is a legend in this game. I met up with him, I met up, I believe, with Get Right, and I met up with Budak, the owner of Inferno Online, and they picked the teams from drawing, just from picking papers where we wrote down all the players. So that's how we mixed up the teams, and I think we had a good mixture of players. We had Zaz, who was the best female player. We had old legends, Zet, Spawn. We had new players. We had top level players, Pasha, Neo, all these guys, Scream, whatever. So the whole idea, the concept, I think was good, because we did bring in, I do believe we did bring in a lot of viewers. At that time, I also spoke to Anders and Semler, and they were like, yeah, sure, we need also to contribute in some way. They were the best casters back then, the most famous casters at that time. And they said, yeah, we're going to cast this and we will help. So I did set up a GoFundMe page. And as you mentioned, a PayPal account according to that, but the PayPal account immediately got blocked down and said that you cannot bring in more than, I don't know exactly what the limit was, but
maybe 10,000 or something, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, something like that. So it was like blocked very, very early, like even before the tournament was about to start, because people were already starting to donate money. So we had maybe less than 24 hours to find a solution. And at that time, I spoke to Fiflaren, and he was like, yeah, let me just check with the NRP guys if we can use their PayPal account, because that's a business account and they can bring in money and that's legit and all that. We can use that account. I was like, sure. So I don't know who he talked to, if he talked to the management side or if he spoke to Anders or Semler, because they had also access to that account. But eventually we could use that account. So everything was fine. The money that people would donate would go directly to that account. And yeah, so that's how the tournament went. People donated. I think we brought in 225,000 euros, which is a lot of money.
Sure.
And everything, like from the tournament side, I think everything went smooth. We had fun when we played. There was like people during the tournament doing some sort of like video shoutouts, picture shoutouts, where people stood with a sign and saying like, go for Balkan. Like there was a lot of talking about that tournament, and I was overall very, very happy with it. The thing was, right after that tournament, the thing was like, okay, now we're supposed to send that money. The thing was, in that time, a lot of people had already sent money to the region in terms of through the Red Cross. So the main issue, or the main thing that people needed was already established when it comes to medicals and stuff like that. So the thing now was, okay, now they need to help to build up like their houses again. So instead of me, if I back up a little bit, when Fnatic said, let's wait a couple of days and we can do it with you, if I would have waited, the purpose of me sending the money, building a house would have been perfect. But at that time when Fnatic asked me, I didn't believe, I believed that the money had to go down fast to the...
Right, it was an emergency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that wasn't the case after the tournament ended. So the case was, okay, let's see if we can build something that will always be there and that will make a difference in some family's life. So this was I do believe it was sometime in May. And every year, as I've done since I was a child, every year going to my relatives in Bosnia. So when I went there, I went to Bosnia. I met up with a organization who had like deals with other big organizations to build houses. One German company, I think it's a German company called HECO, who like are working in the construction business. They had a deal where they could build houses, and I got presented with that idea. The house cost 16,000 euros, which was more than half of the money that we raised. So the main concern was, okay, the tournament itself was supposed to go to Croatia, to Bosnia and Serbia, and I was like, okay, can we mix it up somehow so that if we build a house for 16,000 euros, can we maybe help a Serbian family in Bosnia? Because in that way we can like kill two birds with one stone.
Sure.
So that's when they said, yeah, we can build a house in this region where a lot of Serbians are living, and they live in Bosnia. So I was like, perfect, let's build a house there. And that was in the summer. So as the months progressed, the biggest problem, the biggest mistake that I did there was that I wasn't on these organizations to show me proof and give me updates on what is going. They were very eager to get the money, but as soon as they got the money, they were like a bit stale on to give me information about the thing. So the months went by. I joined NIP and everything. So in February, I think it was in February 2015, a random person tweeted to me and said, what happened to the Go with the charity money? And at this time, the CS community, I do believe the professionals had a much closer contact with the community. It wasn't something it wasn't weird seeing a professional player be on the forums on HLTV responding to something or writing something. We had a much closer contact with the community. So in my case, when he wrote to me, I answered that. I answered that guy, and I also think this was also a big mistake that I did, was to answer him, because as soon as I did, I gave him a spark where he started to bring up different parts to this whole conversation, and made a HLTV post where he started to investigate me. And as you said, he mentioned that I had bought a brand new, I don't know if he said Mercedes or BMW, but he had contacts with the car dealership at the place where I bought it, and they confirmed to him that I had bought a new one. And that was like, a lot of people bought that, like they thought that he was legit and what he said was true. I remember one guy in that post, he said that, okay, I double checked the license plate. This car is 10 years old. 9 years old. It's not a new car. So a lot of claims that he said wasn't true. Also, the third biggest mistake that I did in this whole thing was that I went in and answered, like, every claim that I did. I answered back and said, this is not true. This is how it is. So what happened was that we had that conversation on that thread at hltv.org, but it felt like it was some sort of a loop, because he said something, I replied, he said something else, I replied, he said something else, I replied, and went on, and then he got back to the first point again. So it was just like he wasn't allowing me to win that discussion or to prove my innocence, because that was my whole idea, was to prove my innocence in that. He just put a lot of claims without any backing to it. What a lot of people tend to forget is that, first of all, I did not have any access to the money. So the money went to an account where I didn't have any access to. And I think it's very difficult to take money from an account where you don't have access to. So yeah, that was the whole issue around that. When he made the claims against me, that's when I contacted the organization down in Bosnia and told them like, okay, I need to bring me all the information around the house. And they were like, yeah, we're going to give it to you. And they sent me some pictures, and I posted those pictures. And they also, that organization went out and answered questions. They even had a phone call with this journalist guy where he called them, and they answered questions to him. But yeah, I think it was like a big mess overall, because the information was never 100% clear. And I do believe that a lot of people who read that got like...
They just believed it at face value, right? I mean, another question I have is, do you also feel like that haunted you? Because I know for a few years later, people, especially on Reddit, people love to just like, for no reason, just bring up something from the past. Like, he's an evil person, look what he did. Obviously, my whole career is that, mate. But basically, when people do that, right? I remember at the time, because they'd read this first story, and even though I had no facts, it was just a guy claiming all this stuff, they believed it, like, oh, he's evil. So I remember even when you posted the pictures of the building, they were like, it's fake, or it's way smaller than it should be. Like, it's like from then on, people were always just going to question you, right?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. I do not want to victimize myself. I hate doing that, but it was a very difficult time in my life because a lot of people thought that I had stole money. Like my only purpose, or the only thing that I wanted to do was to do something good, and it eventually ended up being that people thought differently of me, and that was like, it was very hard because. I didn't know how to cope with that. People that I believed in, who I trusted, who I spoke to, they told me like, yeah, just brush that off. He will eventually just, people will forget about that. You don't need to talk about this. And those people that I talked to were the people that had the controversies with NIP that I found out 5 years later. So everything that happened was very, very... I don't know. It was. I don't know. It was very. I don't know how to phrase this good, but like everything, I couldn't like end a sentence like in those regards. A lot of things were happening, and I couldn't cope with everything at that time, which eventually just led up to me just like putting my hands up in the air and like, I can't do anything with this. And as the time went by, I was like, even started like to believe that I like did something wrong in all this, and like got fine with people believing what I did. I remember I spoke to my mom, and she told me like the only thing that's important is that your conscience is clear, and there's one guy above who is the one who will decide if you're right or wrong. As long as your conscience is clear, then don't worry about the other things. But even all these things that people told me to help me didn't help me, because it did hurt me whenever I read somewhere that people said, charity, a thief. Like it did hurt me, because that was my main purpose, was to help. But I got, in turn, I got looked at differently. And then one interesting thing happened, and that was when I think it was my brother who asked me, do I believe in karma? And I said yes. And he told me, what did you do in November 2014? And I said, yeah, I accused a player of cheating. And that happened 5 or 6 months after me accusing that player. Same thing happened to me. So, yeah, that's when he told me that the thing about the karma. That's when I was like, okay, I fucked up another player's career maybe, and now the picture of me has also been fucked up, and yeah, so that's that conversation that I had with my brother was the turning point of me just accepting everything that had happened, and just live with the fact that people will always believe that I did something fishy with that money. Some people do believe me, some people do not believe me. I cannot convince the people who don't believe me. I cannot convince them. They have already made up their mind. It's always going to be like that, so I just have to live with it. That's when I I somehow ended up being fine with all this because of the accusations that I did against Flasha in 2014.